Yo, this video is part of my Into the Mix mixing course. I want to show you some of the challenges I ran into when mixing this track. This track is in the progressive Psytrance genre, but you might run into these issues if you produce Psytrance, trance, EDM, drum and bass, house, and techno. In each section of this video, you will learn about a different mixing tool. So whether you're a beginner producer or already on your way up, you will find some useful information in this video. Let's go.
Next we want to EQ the bass. I'm going to use FabFilter Pro Q3 because it has a linear phase mode. This is very important and let's explain why. So whenever you make a bass line like this, you need to cut all the low frequencies because the wave of the bass is really big and it's taking a lot of space in the mix. So anything below 40 to 45 Hz is unnecessary. You can barely hear it, but the wave itself is really big and takes a lot of space. So you just need to cut it. But you need to cut it with a linear phase EQ. And this is why. So let's add a cut with 30 dB per octave. Let's put it on around 43, 44 Hz. And let's have a listen. Look at the waveform. Let me turn the filter off. And notice that there is actually quite a big change in the shape of the waveform. Let's turn it back on. Okay. Let's change it from zero latency to linear phase mode. Notice that now there is no change in the waveform if I turn the EQ off. On zero latency, without a cut, it's shaped like that. With the cut, we have a bit of a change in the shape. Notice like these little bits here. It's actually changing the phase of the bass. Once you change it to linear phase mode, these little bits disappear. And if I turn off the cut, there's no significant change in the shape of the bass. And that is very important when you're trying to keep your bass sounding as clean as possible. It's a minor detail, but these minor details add up to making a big difference overall.
So next up, make sure to record your basses into audio. This is why.
Perfect, so now we have a note. And the highlighted section right here is why I like to record my notes into audio. If you left this note in MIDI, this part of the bass will be overlapping with the kick and it will completely destroy the transient of this kick. Let me show you. Let's put an oscilloscope on the kick and bass group and let's solo this part. Let's only play the kick and the gliding bass. Notice the shape of the transient of the kick. Let's mute the bass. As you can see, the tail of the bass completely destroyed the transient of the kick. So let's just get rid of that and delete. Next, let's add a bit of a fade to make sure that this bass doesn't interfere with the transient, and we will also add a bit of a fade here to prevent a click. Let's play our bass line and see what we got so far.
So let's assume you already kind of know how to use a compressor, but do you actually know? There are only two ways to use a compressor. Let's find out.
There are two ways to use a compressor. One is using it as a transient shaper. The second one is using it as a balancing tool. And to not confuse you too much, we will talk about how to use it as a balancing tool in a later episode. Let's use it as a transient shaper. Basically, we want to shape the transient of this hi-hat. So, we have the attack, we have the release, we have the ratio, we have the thresholds. These are the four things that are important in a compressor. Think about it as an automatic volume fader. That's what a compressor is doing. A compressor is an automatic volume fader. The attack means how quickly it will take to the volume fader to start going down. The release means how long it will take to the volume fader to go back up to zero. The ratio is always a bit too complicated to actually understand, but you can think about it like this. A higher ratio means more gain reduction, a lower ratio means less gain reduction. So if we have a ratio of 2:1, the volume fader will just go a bit down. If we have a volume of 4:1, it will go twice as much. And all of these parameters depending on the threshold. So obviously the compressor is reacting to incoming sounds. If the threshold is on 0, then it means that no sound is hitting the threshold. But if I'm reducing the threshold, then sounds will start hitting the threshold, and every part of the sound that crossed the threshold will be affected by the volume fader. So we want to make sure that our initial peak, our initial transient of the hi-hat will get lower in volume, so the hi-hat will generally be lower in volume over time, which means we can increase the volume after that using our makeup gain, and then the hi-hat will sound a bit more flat, but also a lot more powerful and a lot more louder. Let's do that. So we put the attack all the way down. Let's put the release almost all the way down, and let's start with the threshold on 0. A good practice is to guess what setting of the compressor you need before you played the sound. Then play the sound and start reducing the threshold, and just then make adjustments as you need. Let's add 5 dB of makeup gain. Let's listen to how this sounds in context compared to our reference track. Yes, I'm really happy with it. In terms of dynamics, in terms of loudness, it's starting to match.
So, next up, how many sidechain techniques do you know? Let's talk about one of them.
I want to add sidechain compression to make sure that whenever the kick is playing, this hi-hat is ducking a bit in volume. Let's talk about sidechain. So there are quite a few ways where you can use a sidechain. You can use a compressor. We said the compressor is an automatic volume fader that will get triggered by the kick. So whenever the kick is playing, the compressor will start going down in volume. But we can also use some other tools. Let's check one of them out. So one of my favorite tools are Gatekeeper by Polyverse Music. It has a lot of presets. If you go to ducking and search for pre-duck, this is an envelope shaper. Basically, this is an LFO tool. It basically shapes the sound. So this is on a rate of 16th. That means this is 1 bar. So the entire envelope here will control this. And we want this part to reduce a bit in volume whenever the kick is playing, or mainly just this one. So what we can do is we can drag this to around here, and we don't want it to be reduced in volume all the way, so let's turn it a bit up to something like this, and let's have a listen. Notice the slight pumping effect.
So, we talked a bit about compression, but do you know how to use a multi-band compressor and why? Let's find out a good use for multi-band compression.
Next, I want to use a multi-band compressor to control some of those harsh frequencies in the high mids, maybe around 2.6K. So if you look at the spectrum analyzer right here, notice where are the harsh frequency appearing from. Yeah, notice all of that. So let's add a band right here. Let's solo it. Yeah, these are all of the harsh frequencies. Actually, we also have some muddiness right there. Yeah, listen to that. Just when it appears here, let's add a bit of threshold so we have a bit of gain reduction there. Notice how much smoother this sounds compared to the before. Can add a bit more of gain reduction there. Let's reduce the threshold a bit more. Nice. Let's listen in context. Nice, it really smooths the sounds up and doesn't sound as harsh.
So if you ever struggle mixing your tracks and you want to learn a simple system for mixing electronic music, this course is for you. Click on the link below to find out more and see you there. Peace.